Hey there, welcome back to another episode of the $1 Million Body Podcast. And if you're here, it's probably because you're a high performer, a real estate agent, or a business owner that's interested in maximizing your physique, your finances, and your family time using fitness and nutrition as a force multiplier in your life. If you're not already a part of the Facebook group, definitely go to check out n8trainingsystems.com/group. In this group, that's where we stream live these podcast episodes every single Monday, as well as having a ton of different resources that you can check out and download that are going to make your life just a lot better. So again, check out n8trainingsystems.com/group to join us there. So if you're already a member of the group and you're watching it live, we're excited to have you here because today we're going to be talking with Elliot Schackne, a former CrossFit coach. Now he's a strength coach, a nutritionist, and an integrative health coach. He's been doing that for over 10 years. He's coached and competed in CrossFit for 5+ years. And currently he still works with a lot of CrossFit athletes, as well as a lot of people over 40 who are looking to get their physique as on point as possible, getting the leanest, the best shape of their entire life without spending a ton of time in the gym, without burning themselves out, doing ridiculous workouts, or without getting injured. So super glad to have you here, Elliot. Really pumped that you could join us today.
Yeah, I love it. Great to be here. Great to chat with you, Nate.
So one of the other things that we do here on the podcast is we give a shout out to clients who are absolutely killing it. And I would love if you would, if you got someone in mind who has also been crushing it, client or a friend or anything like that, shout them out right now. Tell them what's up.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, so got off a call recently with one of my clients, Crystal. So Crystal, if you end up watching this is a shout out for you. She is one of my nutrition clients, and like you mentioned, that I do a lot of that integrative health work, and she has been focusing on, she was kind of stuck in terms of body composition, and we've been focusing on some health aspects and some underlying sort of health handbrakes. And it took some dedication on her part to kind of stick to a somewhat challenging protocol for a bit, but it's been paying off, and now we're seeing the needle move, and she's doing great.
Awesome. Crystal, you're watching this? Great job. You can keep it going. I love the term health handbrakes also, Elliot. I want to talk about that a little bit more. But first of all, kind of we were been talking recently about some of like the different trends we see in fitness and nutrition. And one of the things that I love talking about, I love like, I have a love-hate relationship with it, is CrossFit. Personally, in my experience, I find that that CrossFit does a lot of things right. Number one, it's a great for community building. I see people who show up to CrossFit classes because they love their friends who go there, and they have great events, and they have barbecues, and they're just there's always that the social pressure, if you will, to show up there and work your ass off. I think that's awesome. But I want to talk about today, is CrossFit really, in your opinion, Elliot, one of the best things that people can be doing to get their physique on point? Because I really want to approach things from a fat loss perspective. How do you dial this in?
Mm-hmm.
We see Rich Froning, and we see these CrossFit Games athletes who are just ripped, just looking bonkers, right? And I feel like it's very easy to be that's it. That's what I want. That's the ideal physique. I mean, because if I could snap my fingers and look like Rich Froning, I would do it. What do you think? Where are you at on that?
Yeah. I mean, those are a couple great points, because number one, because it's stuff that I think a lot of people they may realize, but they don't really process it, is, yes, I completely agree that social aspect is really powerful and is amazing. And it's something that hasn't existed in a lot of other training methodologies and modalities. Some of my closest friends came out of my time in CrossFit. For that reason, it can be difficult for people to separate the enjoyment of that experience with what's actually best for their body and their goals. And then part of it is that idea of there's a difference between the competition CrossFit athlete and then everyone else that's coming to their weekly CrossFit classes. And there's a difference in type and amount of training, and those are the different worlds, different paths. And so sometimes they get blended, because people, like you said, see the physiques and oh, well, if they're doing this thing, CrossFit, then I want to do that thing. But like you said, is it best? And before we kind of elaborate on that, I do want to mention that because as soon as you say the word CrossFit, it's a trigger word for
It's
a
a
lot of people,
trigger
right?
word for sure. Yeah.
And you're going to get a very polarized like reaction to it. And I do want to preface this whole conversation with, I'm not anti-CrossFit, but I also wouldn't say that I'm pro-CrossFit, because just like you mentioned, there are a lot of benefits, but there's a lot of missing links too. There's a lot of limitations and weak points. And so there's a lot of ways that it could be improved and still people can get all those benefits, like the social aspect and that kind of stuff, with a little bit more not only safety, but probably better results in terms of fat loss, in terms of body composition, in terms of long-term health. So I just wanted to lay that out there, that this is not like, oh, we're just going to bash on CrossFit, but I do want to point out the limitations.
Well, I think like this isn't going to work out, Elliot. Like we can't both be like moderate in our stance. One of us is going to be like, no, fuck CrossFit. And the other's going to be like, yeah, CrossFit's awesome. We love it. Like otherwise it's just, we got to be a little bit more polarizing. So I'm going to have to take that anti-CrossFit stance.
Yeah,
I just adopted it just today.
Okay, good. You take the stance, and then because there's going to be a lot of stuff that I agree with you on, and then
you can be moderate this time.
So the first thing that comes to mind when I think about your question is it best for body composition, and the answer is going to be well, even though it will work for some people, it can have absolutely deleterious effects for other people, and it might be one of the worst things to do for a lot of people in their current state. Now, again, taking the moderate stance, it doesn't mean that it couldn't be good for them at some point, but for a lot of people, might be right now, it's not the best choice for them.
By the way, deleterious is an amazing word. Thank you for using that.
Makes me sound smart at parties.
I mean, like, you know that in this group, there's a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, people who have like jobs where they're wearing a lot of hats. You know, they're working long hours, they work for themselves. So like, I love that you brought up the point of like, it could be a good option, but it might not be the right option for you at the moment. I want to elaborate a little bit on how would you know? Like, how would you know if it's a good fit for you, or like, what are some warning signs to know, like maybe CrossFit's not the right choice for the time being?
Yeah. Great. So, you mentioned those high achievers, high performers, wearing a lot of hats. I'm gonna be using the word stress a lot, but I want to set the understanding that when we talk about stress, we're talking about anything that's imposing that change on the body. And so that is not just aggravation or emotional stress. It's not just, oh, I have a lot of work to do today. It's, what's going on with your family, environmental toxins, inflammatory foods, not getting enough sleep, anything going, are there internal issues, gut health, hormone imbalances, all these things add to that quote stress bucket. Mm-hmm. to people's lives. And if it fills up from all these different sources, then eventually it's going to start to overflow. And exercise is a stress. We do it on purpose to try to get a good adaptation, a good response from it, but it is still adding to that stress bucket. So if someone is at a point where their bucket is already full, then is a beat down, super stressful workout gonna just add to that bucket and cause it overflow, or is it actually going to be helpful?
Right. So if you're looking at your life and you're like, okay, I get about 4 hours of sleep a night, I'm working until 10 p.m. I'm running around here and there. I've got people like having emergencies, I'm putting out fires all the time. I am eating fast food. I'm eating on the run. I don't do any yoga. I don't stretch at all. Like all those lifestyle things are just kind of putting things like into the stress bucket, into the stress bucket, into the stress bucket. And you're never really taking anything and pulling it out and putting it into the recovery bucket. Like I like the metaphor there. So if you're looking at your life like that, then maybe that CrossFit, that Metcon, like the metabolic conditioning, just high intensity, just soul destroying workout is probably not your best friend in that situation, is what you're saying.
Yeah, you're right. And so what we can do is we can actually sort of, in a sense, we get more specific about this. So what's the actual, like, because nowadays stress is sort of a hot button topic, and yes, people, like I'm sure a lot of your audience knows that they live a stressful life, but they don't really necessarily have something to directly associate that with. So what happens when someone is under chronic stress that they're not balancing enough recovery? So chronic stress is going to cause an increase in things like inflammation. It's going to keep circulating, and it's not going to be able to get cleared out quite as well. People probably have heard that, but it's sort of like a fire not getting put out. So what is chronic stress causes that inflammation to stay around longer. What does chronic inflammation cause? Well, pretty much every disease and dysfunction. It's going to affect how you feel. It's going to affect the ability for, I know you're big on like that glycogen priming. So like being able to get carbs into the muscle, it's going to block that from happening.
It messes with your insulin, your blood sugar, right, too?
For sure. And so like all that biochemistry, inflammation is junking up all the works on all that stuff. It's going to release chemicals that are going to cause you to hold on to more body fat, which is going to cause more inflammation, which is going to cause you to hold on to more body fat. So all this chronic stress already from everything else going on in your life is perpetuating that situation. And then adding a workout routine that induces a huge amount of inflammation into your body, I think is a no-brainer as to whether or not that's going to be helpful or not. Additionally, oxidative stress, and in layman's terms, that's wear and tear. So at the cellular level, you're constantly it's constantly making this, but clearing it out. If you're living with chronic, you're not going to be as efficient at clearing that out, which is again going to cause a lot of disease and dysfunction, and more wear and tear, even for a superficial reason, faster aging, and less mental clarity. So you're not going to be as good performing even at your job and your life and that kind of stuff. So again, a training program that's inducing a lot of that oxidative stress, a lot of that wear and tear that's not being properly mitigated, is just going to add to that additional burden. And that's going to make it harder to get the body that you want.
So basically what you're saying is like, if you're basically taking like 3 or 4 different caffeinated beverages to get you through the day, just period, adding in a brutal beatdown of a workout, even if you're like, oh man, I just got to push myself, I just got to like get in the gym, clear my head, that's still going to have a more negative, like a net negative effect rather than a positive effect that we're trying to get from working out on bettering ourselves. Is that basically basically right?
Yeah, for sure. And I'm glad you brought up the point of like that people using their workout time to kind of clear their head, because that's a huge benefit from exercise, is that mental release and that sort of personal time. However, like you said, what's the net result? There's the impact on your body is probably going to outweigh that 1 hour of mental, psychological benefit that you're getting from it, because it's going to carry over days, weeks, months, and who knows if you keep doing it.
So, okay, a lot of the people listening to this are these like type 1, like hard charging. I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm going to push myself to complete exhaustion in the gym. So like for those people listening who are not going to sleep more and not going to do yoga and not going to meditate and not going to like do some of these recovery techniques, but they still want to go hard in the gym, what can they do? What can they add to their life, or like other things that they can do to mitigate some of the stress and to hopefully shift the balance back into the positive column of these workouts? What would you recommend in that situation?
Solutions. Okay. Yeah. So, because, that's what's actually going to help people. And that's the thing is like, I want people to know that we are going to offer some solutions here, so that you just don't feel bad about doing a difficult workout.
If you want to keep diving into like the pain here, we can go deeper first.
Yeah, actually, let's dig in. Let's dig the knife in a little bit more. Yeah.
All right.
Because I think some of these other pain points, so to speak, are important to really appreciate the toll that it could be taking on you. But then we will talk about solutions so they know ways that they can use that gym time to their benefit rather than it digging that hole deeper.
So this is just a teaser. There is some really good content coming. You're gonna want to stick around to the end to hear what Elliot almost just said.
This is what we call in the radio business. We call this a teaser. So, we talked about CrossFit being sort of like a trigger word, and probably maybe one of the first things that comes to people's mind is associating with injury. And that's obviously a huge topic to unpack in itself. But along those same lines, the movement side of things, like the actual programming, even, in addition to the impact and the response that your body's having from it, there are, I'm going to take your side on being the anti-CrossFit for a second. It's touted as the constantly varied, it's like, this is everything you need to be fit. Ironically, it's a very limited scope of movements that it actually includes. And there's a lot of repetitive movement patterns and a lot of training the same muscles in the same way, in the same part of the strength curve. And that can very quickly lead to overuse injuries, or at the very least, bad posture.
I've never done a CrossFit workout that had like a cable bicep curl. So I like right there, like that's for me, I'm out.
No curls is no good for you?
No good. No, I can't deal with it.
But there might be no curls. There's also not enough support for the entire posterior chain. So there's a lot of back stuff missing. There's a lot of glute and hamstring stuff missing. Yes, you're using them in certain exercises, but again, in the same way, there's usually a lot of momentum that you're getting help with, like the kipping pull-up, for example. And so there's not enough of that balance. We'll just say, we'll simplify it to like front and back, and that can lead to poor posture. And we know that there's that direct connection between posture and extra stress on the body, posture and mindset, posture and mood and confidence, and all those things. And so, that's one of the things that we can touch on when we get to the solutions, is what someone could think about including in their routine to make up for that, if they wanted to include some CrossFit, how to fill in the gaps.
Fair enough. And we know that like posture is just so important for like everything you mentioned, the confidence, for your mood, for your energy. Like there was even like, Elliot, I don't know if you know this, but like there's studies that they've shown where people take these power postures and will go into like interviews. So like they did a test where people would take power postures, either like hands on hips, hands above head, or like hands on table, like that real like you're fired stance. And those people would routinely do better in like an impartial panel of interviews than the people who would sit in the corner and wait for the interview, like every single time. So even just little things like that, like a 2-minute little drill you can do changes how you are perceived in the world and how you perceive the world. So like how much more is it if it's something you're training 4 days a week for an hour, training into like kyphosis, training your chest, right? Like too much if you're not really getting enough of that back and that rowing. So yeah, I 100% agree with that.
Yeah, I love that example. And like you said, training yourself into those positions versus training yourself into a more confident position. And then the other thing, which I know is probably big for a lot of your audience, is the testosterone. We sort of touched on it when I mentioned like the sort of the biochemistry impact, but posture, just like you said, that power posture, I think there's studies, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure there's studies that show that connection between posture and testosterone boosting up a few points or so. And then just the impact of that inflammation, oxidative stress on testosterone in general, and that quality of life, that recovery, muscle mass, the ability to lose fat, and all the impact that testosterone has. So it goes, the impact gets, permeates your entire existence.
And it sounds like when you start getting down this road of just like absolute beat down workouts, you kind of can start spiraling. like I want to talk a little bit about more like, okay, well, what's the difference between a CrossFit, like for someone who's never done CrossFit, Elliot, what's the difference between like a CrossFit workout and then like going to the gym and lifting hard, like a really hard chest day or leg day? Can you like give some examples of different CrossFit workouts that you've coached or participated in where,
Yeah.
like maybe like Uncle Rabdo or whatever his name is.
Yeah.
Uncle Touchy. I forget, but.
So that's a great delineation. There's another word that makes you sound smart at parties.
I'm writing these down, by the way.
So the typical CrossFit structure is going to be a little bit of strength work at the beginning of the class, and then that conditioning, the sort of what it's more known for is that beat down conditioning workout where you're just exhausted, making sweat angels on the floor, seeing white lights. And so that's essentially, it's a conditioning workout. And that is one type of training stimulus. You can train that metabolic pathway. There's also, so that would be different than a more relative strength training quality or training stimulus, which would be more of that lifting. You'd probably have more rest time. There wouldn't be quite as much of that inflammation oxidative stress being imposed. So it just comes down to those are two different training stimuli, which again, to take your side again, is like trying to serve two gods. So if you have one class where you're trying to do strength work and you're doing conditioning, which it's called a strength conditioning program, you're going to make maybe small progress in each of those versus focusing on just one training quality at a time. So
what's like an example of a CrossFit workout where you're like, okay, slow down killer?
Probably one of the most popular or well-known ones might be Fran. So Fran, because a lot of these like benchmark workouts have a name associated to it. So Fran is the name of a workout where it's essentially a superset with no rest, pairing what's called a thruster, barbell thruster. So I think of a front squat exploding up into an overhead press, pairing that with chin-ups, or actually I'm sorry, pull-ups, not a chin-up, because chin-ups are missing in CrossFit. But so it's paired with pull-ups. So you're going back and forth, 21 of each, then 15 of each, then 9 of each. And the fastest times are, I think, are under 2 minutes. But maybe the average person might take 4, 5, 6, 7 minutes or something like that. But when you really redline it and you go all out, you're just completely toast. You can't breathe, you can't move, and it just completely exhausts everything. There's other ones that are longer, like 20, 30-minute workouts, which are still just as much of a beatdown. But it's that kind of stuff where it's very intensive conditioning, nonstop, trying to go as fast as you can.
I think the key there is the nonstop. By the way, the world record for Fran right now, according to Google, is 1 minute, 53 seconds. But like every CrossFit workout that I've ever done is a competition, right? So like they say like, oh, you're competing against yourself, but like really, I'm not going to let this asshole beat me at push-ups or kidding pull-ups or whatever it is. So you get into this mindset of like, go as hard as you can for as long as you can. So it's either like, how many rounds can you get in 10 minutes of these exercises? Or it's like, how fast can you finish all of these reps before you're done? Or it's like every single minute you're doing some activity where it's kind of like compounding and getting harder and harder and harder as you get more and more tired. So it's like, I think the real thing that when I think of CrossFit workouts, when I think of metabolic conditioning, I think of nonstop, no breaks, no rest, no rest time in between sets. Would you agree with that?
Yep, absolutely. And again, of course, disclaimer, there are some smarter, more well-programmed CrossFit gyms out there. They're definitely in the minority, but they are out there, and they might do more interval style work, but usually even those intervals are still set up to be insufficient rest. But yes, it is.
Besides CrossFit, would you say this kind of like this metabolic conditioning style workout applies to any other kind of popular training modalities? So, I mean, like maybe we're shitting on CrossFit, but let's shit on other things too.
Yeah, for sure. Like it totally applies to most of those boot camp type things like Orange Theory, F45, spin class, all that stuff where that's people love because of the endorphins and the group and whatever group atmosphere. But yeah, all those, that same thing, like nonstop, go, 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 just keeping your heart rate. Like the whole point of Orange Theory is like to keep it up in that orange color.
The fat burning
And
zone.
zone,
Write that
yeah.
down.
But yeah, all those sort of high paced group fitness classes.
And like personally, I feel like there's a time and a place for those things, right? I think that I like to have some sort of hardcore workouts every so often, and not as like a way to train my body, but more as a way to train my mind to push through discomfort and to teach myself that I'm actually in charge, and my brain and my uncomfortableness doesn't get to dictate like when I stop. And I think that's a really important characteristic to have. But personally, I don't believe that needs to be trained every single workout or even once a week. You know, I think that having a once a month, like we call it a nutsack session, is totally like appropriate in terms of just getting them all the benefits without having that like cumulative stress that builds up. What do you think?
Yeah, yeah, I'm totally on board, 100% agree. Because one of the things I think is not underappreciated is the effect on your nervous system. And so there's obviously a huge benefit to those, what do you call them, nutsack sessions.
Yeah.
And because a lot of times, especially, I mean, well, men and women, but especially for your, like that it's a very sort of male thought process and mindset that I need to get in there and tackle this thing. And it can help with that. But like you said, it's not something that needs to be trained so frequently. And part of that is that effect on the nervous system, because when you're redlining it like that, that takes a lot out of you. And so, and this is actually something that another con is yes, you have your me time in the gym, but what's happening to your nervous system for the next 1, 2, 3, 4 hours after that? Are you really functioning at top speed mentally if your nervous system is shot from having just done that brutal workout? And then,
as someone who's staggered out of a CrossFit workout before, like I can 100% say that's not like the time to go get my detail work done.
yeah. And now imagine that day after day for 4 or 5 or more days a week, that constant need to be on and focused and challenging yourself to pushing yourself to 11, that day after day, week after week, month after month, that takes a huge toll on just your nervous system and how everything just kind of your existence at that point. So I think that's another thing to appreciate is what's that impact on your body.
So kind of in summary, basically, those daily Metcon workouts can increase your oxidative stress, can increase the amount of like inflammation in your body. They can increase your your mental fatigue and generally like keep you redlining in that sympathetic nervous system state, that fight or flight response, like over and over again. And they can also increase your like wear and tear and your like working in the exact same movement patterns all the time if you're only doing like wall balls and kipping pull-ups. So like you can build up like fatigue and stress faster with this metabolic conditioning type workouts, looking at you CrossFit, but also boot camps, Orange Theory, everything else that kind of has that same like all-in mentality. But those things are not going to serve you unless you have your recovery techniques just dialed in on point. Is that about what, like summarizing that correctly?
Yep. Great summary. And one last thing on that is that there's that disparity between your professional CrossFit athlete and your average Joe who has a job and a life and a family and all these plates spinning. The professional athlete, that's their livelihood. So they have the luxury to take naps and rest, and it's just train, eat, rest, and they only have to worry about that versus someone that doesn't have all those ducks in a row, all those recovery boxes checked.
Cool.
Speaking of the fight or flight, do you want to get into the sympathetic, parasympathetic
I mean, I touch on that a little bit when I'm talking about like using body weight exercises and that sort of thing. So yeah, let's touch on that briefly before we talk about like, how do you actually fit this into your life?
Okay, sure. So I guess real quick, they might be familiar with it. There's part of your nervous system is the part that regulates all those automatic things like your heart beating and your body, like your lungs working and that kind of stuff, is your and your blood pressure is your autonomic nervous system. And there's two halves to that. There's I'm going to throw out a couple big words, but that's all right. Sympathetic and parasympathetic. Easy way to remember: S, sympathetic, S for stress. So that is your fight or flight side, and then there's the rest and digest side. And so if 16 hours a day when you're not sleeping, hopefully if you're sleeping 8 hours a day, 16 to 20 hours a day, if you have that fight or flight switch switched on from work, life, family, all the hats and everything that you're doing, and then you're adding this additional burden to it, then where's that time to rest and digest and switch it off? And it's just, for a lot of people, it's just so skewed and they're not getting nearly enough. And so that's where, and so a lot of that anaerobic training, that conditioning, is pushing that fight or flight response, again, 4 or 5 or more days a week, and versus doing activities that are going to support that rest and digest side. And this is, and you can measure this. This is for the folks that are into numbers and seeing that tangible data. Yeah. So like heart rate and heart rate variability. And that's, if you want, that can lead us into our solutions if you want.
I would love that. By the way I remember it is parasympathetic, like paralyzed, like if I'm sleeping, I'm paralyzed.
Or like, what's that, like sleep, what's that where you wake up, but you're
sleep paralysis?
Sleep paralysis, yeah.
Like that? It's not very restful, to be honest with you. It's very frightening. I think I'm probably pretty sympathetic when I have sleep paralysis. Because you're always seeing something on the other side of the room. Like you put a jacket on a chair and you're like, there's someone in the room and I'm going to die now and I can't move.
It's like a clown, a scary clown or something.
Definitely. There's 100% going to be a scary clown in your room when you have sleep paralysis. By the way, like that autonomic nervous system always makes me think of like when you're like, oh, it's this thing that like helps you like regulate your breath and you're blinking and stuff like that. So just try not to think about your eyes and blinking right now.
Right.
Just try not to. No, you're fine.
Yeah, immediately. Just
I feel this is normal.
Fail a lie detector test immediately.
Yep. Yeah, but let's talk a little bit about recovery. I would love to chat a little bit about HRV. I have more in the Whoop strap recently, and I've been loving some of the data that I get. Even though I feel like it's really geared towards endurance athletes, I think that it's been great to see. It's also helped me cut down on drinking because that shit gets me down. Apparently.
Yeah, and that's what I love, the Whoop strap. I've heard great things about it, and I love that it allows that constant monitoring of things, and then you can see how little things affect. Like if you have a drink the night before, or if you eat off-plan foods, you can see how that affects your readiness the next day. And some people can get kind of caught up in the minutia of that, like, oh, like it went up a little bit, so I'm going to train harder today, or it went down. If you think about more of the trends, like what's the trend over the week by week? Is it overall improving, or is it overall going down? And that might inform how you approach maybe the next week and say, okay, I'm going to back off. I'm going to do maybe less sessions or less intensive sessions. But yeah, that heart rate, like your resting heart rate, first thing when you wake up, how's that? Is that trending up or is it trending down?
The Whoop strap monitors it overnight. So I get to see like kind of what my average like resting heart rate is in the PM. And what I'll see is like if I've had like a really hard workout, and it's interesting because like when it measures your strain, the Whoop strap does, but I'll do like a really hard leg workout and my strain will be based on my heart rate during that time. So all my strain, like on a scale of 1 to 21, will be like 6 or 7, not really that high. But I'll see that after like a beat down squat workout, my resting heart rate will be elevated. My respirations will be like faster. And my HRV, my heart rate variability, will be lower, and a lower score on that just means you're not quite as ready to take on new activities to switch between parasympathetic rest and digest versus sympathetic fight or flight. So it's like you're kind of a little bit more you need a little bit more recovery to get back to it, versus a endurance workout, especially if I keep it under 30 minutes or making sure I'm hitting my walks on a daily basis. That really elevates my recovery throughout the night. So that's kind of some stuff I've been noticing.
Yeah, I hope that that your listeners and your clients take note of that, because I see that across the board is when I get people just to walk more, that it boosts their recovery and leads to fat loss as well. And I know, and it's a way, it's free, and you can do it as much as you want.
Yeah.
And it's you're not taking away someone's activity. Say, hey, I want you to move. I want you to go have your me time. It just needs to be dialed back. I can't take credit for this, but years ago, one of my earlier mentors, when beast mode was all the rage, he started referring to this type of stuff as least mode.
I'm just gonna give you credit for it because I like it.
As far as your listeners know, I'll take credit for it.
Done.
But yeah, so that's it. You can still get in movement, you can still get your activity in, but in a more appropriate pace and level of intensiveness that's going to help you rather than hurt you.
So like, are you saying that for some people, rather than going and hitting that Fran workout at their CrossFit box, they should go and do like an hour-long walk instead?
You got it. I know it's hard to believe, but
it's hard to believe it. It's because like we live in that's like we want to go beast mode. Like you have to put it like all in. You know, we're going to war at the gym, right? And right. So yeah, I mean, just look at all the names of pre-workout drinks. They're absolutely insane.
And go on, yeah, because so actually, to one more point on that, I just had this conversation with one of my own clients who could not wrap his mind around this exact idea, and I said, well, I'll tell you what, just go this week, go for some walks. He has an Apple Watch. I want you to see how little it takes. I want you to keep your heart rate under 120. And I want you to see how little it takes to get there. And he goes, oh, it's always like, it shoots up over 120. It's just during the conversation. He didn't even do it yet, but he knew how quickly, just from like walking up some stairs, his heart rate would shoot over 120. Like that's how unconditioned your nervous system is right now. That's how constantly stressed out you are. So,
and okay, just a quick thing on that. It's not that you are out of shape. What you said is your nervous system is deconditioned. So it's not like you walk upstairs and you're breathing hard because like you need to go do more CrossFit workouts. It's actually the opposite.
Right.
Yep. Blowing my mind right now.
Yeah. Right. Your conditioning, it's not about, right. Don't take it personally. It's not an ego thing. It's not like we're saying that you are out of shape and you need to do more conditioning. It's that nervous system response.
And you don't have to take like our word for it. You can get like a Whoop strap or check your Apple Watch, or you can get these biometric data. Like the Aura Ring does a good job of this. There's a lot of ways you can measure your progress easily right now with like some of this awesome tech we have. Mm-hmm. So like, yeah, you can believe us or not believe us, but go test it. Go find out for yourself. Go do 5 hour-long walks over the next 5 days and see what your resting heart rate is the next day.
Yeah. And it's not biohacking because...
No, it's biohacking.
I think RoboCop is biohacking.
I'm pretty sure I drink MCT oil and I wear Whoop straps, so I'm a biohacker.
So we covered that aerobic activity, that low intensity activity, how helpful that can be. I sort of touched upon the frequency. So most people don't need more conditioning workouts. They usually need more of strength workouts, which we were sort of talking about before, which is you lift some heavy weights and then you rest. And you let your muscles, you let things recover so that they can perform at that same level again for your next set, and then you rest. And that process repeats, and that's what is going to facilitate muscles growing, body fat dropping, and not creating excess inflammation, oxidative stress.
I like this point, and like I like this also in terms of resistance training. I think it's also bears worth mentioning in terms of sprints as well, or hill sprints, that resting between your sets is going to give you a little bit of more time for your muscles to recover, for your central nervous system to kind of wind down, and it's going to help increase your heart rate variability over time. So that's why, like, when I am programming sprints for clients, I don't have them go with 10-second rests or anything like that. We want to make sure that you can come down completely and give your next effort as your maximum intensity, rather than always having that heart rate elevated and then running up and just feeling just exhausted and not going very fast. We want to make sure that your squats, your bench press, whatever strength work you're doing, or your hill sprints, are actually getting an amazing effort every single time. So that's why some people take those like 2-minute breaks, 3-minute breaks.
Yeah, oh man, so I wish I had the numbers in front of me, and I'm blanking on that coach's name. The one of the sort of the legendary track and field coach, who coached, I think, Ben Johnson, anyway, so he sort of wrote the book on that type of interval training to improve his sprinters and his runners and his track athletes.
Charlie Francis,
yes, thank you. So it's the ratio of work to rest is it's like 1, depending on their distance that they're running, is like 1 to 10 or something like that.
Whoa.
So like you run a 100-meter sprint and then you rest 10 minutes, something along those lines.
Hopefully it doesn't take them a minute to run.
It's that work to rest ratio is massive because of the impact, like we talked about, on the nervous system and as you know, the muscles as well, but that nervous system recovery, so that you can perform the next set at the same high level. And if you can keep performing each set at a high level, you're going to get more out of it on the back end.
Wow. Yeah. So talked about low intensity activity, talked about some rest. Can you give us some like nutritional or supplement strategies, you know, to make sure that we are getting the recovery that we need, you know, even if we decide that, like, I'm still going to do F45, I'm still going to do Orange Theory, I'm still going to crush myself at CrossFit. What can we do on the nutrition side? Great
question, because because there's going to be th0those people anyway, and that's fine if you're going to if you feel like you need that in your life. Yeah. I think from my perspective, hands down, the number one missing component that people overlook in this type of training is carbs. Not enough carbs. If anyone was expecting me to say less carbs, hopefully that was a little shocker. Not enough carbs to support the training and to support the recovery. Because undernutrition is an additional stress on the body. And we just talked this whole podcast about the consequences of that. So this type of training, this high intensive conditioning style training, very metabolic, requires carbs. It's very, very carb dominant. And if you're not supplying those, then it's going to create that additional burden on your body to figure out something else in a jiffy. And that's what's going to be catabolic or destructive to your hashtag gains.
And you know I don't want to lose my hashtag gains. No. So I just spent all hour busting my ass to get.
Right.
So obviously we're not going to want to just eat a bunch of pizza, right? So keeping those high quality carbs as well. You have a kind of a favorite or a favorite post workout meal or type of carbs you like having?
Yeah, I mean, there's a bit of personal preference on this, but certainly there's the peri-workout, or like the window around before, during, and after your workout is a great place to add some easily digestible carbs. Something as simple as a carb powder like dextrose or maltodextrin, something along those lines, that is going to be very easy to digest and get absorbed quickly, so it's in the bloodstream ready to use, so you can perform at a high level and actually get the benefits from it. Similar as a post-workout, in your post-workout shake, you probably talked about this, about the importance of carbs post-workout so they get into the muscles. And then food-wise, personally, I'm a huge fan of putting a big chunk of your day's carbs in that first meal after your workout. And this is a time where I kind of prefer, even though I don't like referring to it, but the high glycemic index carbs, like it might be a rice or potato or something like that. because it's going to be faster absorbing and more easily to get into the muscles.
I talk a lot of shit about bananas, but that's a great time to have a banana.
Great time for a banana.
How about supplements? You got any like supplement recommendations that could help someone, avoid some of that oxidative stress, or even just like kind of like the cumulative stress from a rowdy lifestyle?
Yeah, absolutely. And the carbs are something that's going to help with that as well. Taking them before and or during and or after your workout, putting them in that what's called peri-workout window is going to help reduce that a lot, because there's going to be less burden on your body to create carbs or create that energy. They're amino acids. So we could maybe a different podcast topic, but there's that intra-workout nutrition like amino acids and other aminos and nutrients that will support performance so you can get more out of it, and then support recovery. Things like creatine, like beta alanine and citrulline and glutamine and that type of stuff. So yeah, there's a little dusting of some supplement talk about the workouts. Outside of that, like you said, if you're going to do it anyway, and we talked about how massively impactful that inflammation oxidative stress can be, that's where we would look at things like fish oil, like curcumin or boswellia, which is also frankincense if you want to sound smart at parties.
Or if you want to like show up, with a gift for a little baby or something.
Yeah. Some myrrh, some frankincense.
I love a little pre-workout myrrh.
Myrrh is actually an anti-inflammatory.
I know. I love it. That's why I said it. It's because I'm always eating it. People are like, stop eating so much myrrh. It's annoying, but it's my life.
So those things can help mitigate that cumulative inflammation that will build up both from the workout and just kind of that your life of chronic stress. Things like greens powders, which are just a bomb of antioxidants to help support that clearing out of those free radicals, of that oxidative stress, helping prevent that wear and tear or that rusting of your cells in your body.
Especially if you're not the type of person who's not getting 10 servings of fruits and vegetables on a daily basis. Greens powder is like nutritional insurance powder.
Yeah.
I like to mix mine with an emergency packet and some collagen and call it a protein drink.
Yeah. Collagen pre-workout, because the blood flow into your joints helps get the collagen into your joints, because otherwise there's not too much blood flow to your connective tissue and your cartilage. I've been
doing it post-workout. Pre-workout's better.
There's no wrong time to take it, but
okay.
But if it can be helpful, because again, you're getting a lot of blood pumped into your joints at that point. So if it's in the bloodstream, you can get there.
Great tip.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole laundry list of them, but I think those are some biggies. Again, just in case I went too fast, fish oil for sure. It works on so many levels. Curcumin as well works on a ton of different levels. I am a big fan of boswellia, aka frankincense, and you'll see some blends that have both of those two things in it, and a greens powder for supporting that oxidative stress. And there's obviously a whole list of other antioxidants, but I'd say some of those are the biggies and some easy ones to get.
Awesome. Dude, Elliot, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to come on and chat with us. Obviously, you're a wealth of information. We didn't even scratch the surface on some of these topics. So where can people go to connect with you a little bit more and hear more about like your style of fitness, which is obviously almost a little bit counterculture, but you get results. So where do people connect with you?
Yeah, for sure. So my social media is probably the easiest way. Facebook. Well, you can find me on Facebook as a person, so the company is Orion Strength. Orion, like the constellation, the hunter. Orion Strength is on Instagram, and you can find me on Facebook, and I'm usually pretty good about responding. And that's probably, those are the two easiest ways to get in touch with me.
Awesome. Anything you want to, like a parting message, anything you want to leave people with before we jump off?
Parting message.
Hot take? Elliot's hot take. Hot take.
You get a little stinger. Can we add that in post? Get a little stinger in there.
Yeah.
So I'd say parting words would be to take a step back and appreciate that how much you're getting hit and bombarded by stress on all these different levels so consistently. And even though it's going to take a little bit of a mindset shift initially to back off, the reward is going to be tenfold. And so you're going to feel it. You're going to feel more recovered. You're going to feel that improved quality of life. You're going to feel those things. And then you're going to see it in your body composition as a follow-up. And so it might be a pun intended hard pill to swallow, but yeah, if you can handle all those other things that you're doing in your life, you can handle a little bit of a mindset shift to try some of these alternatives to the beatdown workouts.
Alternative ways of getting results. Yeah. Boom. That's a mic drop though, Elliot. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you coming on, and can't wait to hear a little bit more from you. We have to come back and talk just straight intra-workout carbs for like an hour and a half.
Yeah, love it. It's great chatting with you too, Nate.
All right, brother. I'll talk to you very soon.
Okay.